Hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for this kitchen hangout today. I've got some notes for myself here from comments that were made yesterday that I want to answer. First thing I will talk about, we get this regularly about onions and garlic. Those sort of are the backbone to most Mexican sauces. And so oftentimes when somebody tells you a recipe in Mexico, they leave out the onions and garlic because they assume that you're going to start with that. That said, a lot of times I'll start chopping up some garlic and somebody will ask, can I use my garlic press? Of course you can use your garlic press. Feel free to do that. If it's going to be cooked garlic, then yes, you can put it through a garlic press. For me, it takes me longer to clean my garlic press than it does to chop it up, so I just usually choose to do that. Second thing, thick tortilla soup. Somebody was asking about that they had fallen in love in the American Southwest with this thickened tortilla soup. Like you take a whole bunch of the tortillas and you actually blend them in. That is really an American thing. If you love it, do it, okay? But in Mexico, you will usually see it as a brothy soup, especially in central Mexico, like the one I was making yesterday, that has that flavor of pasilla chili in it. Next thing is about salt. Lots of people say, oh, can I leave the salt out? If you don't want salt in your food, leave it out. I will tell you that part of the professional chef's training is to learn the role of salt, because salt is the thing that brings all the flavors together. And so when you're learning to be a professional chef, you really do have to learn the proper use of salt to bring out everything and then to balance it, okay? But if you don't want salt in your food, please feel free to make the food the way that you think it should be made to your taste, okay? And the chiles that we worked with yesterday, I did the pasilla chili, of course. This is ancho chile. They use ancho chile in tortilla soup a lot. In the western side of Mexico and around Michoacan. That is certainly something you could use, or as I said yesterday, you could use some chipotle chili, make it a little spicier, but it would also make it smoky. You might like that part of it as well. Okay, last thing is I'm going to talk about production, because people ask all the time is like, how do you do these productions? This is totally just me hanging out in the kitchen. So I go to the store and get the stuff, and I come and I prep it, and then I cook it with you. So it is totally a low-tech kind of thing. My son-in-law, Kevin, he can wave through, you can see that, is the one that is shooting all of this. We're shooting it on an iPhone. Several of you commented the fact that we actually did get a mic that will make the sound just a little bit better, so hopefully you'll like that. We were able to put that together. And then people ask me, what do you do with all the food? There's only 4 portions at most of everything that we're doing, so we sit down and eat it after this is all over. We could, sometimes if I've got a lot, I will take it down to the restaurant and offer it to people down there, but it's usually not very much. And then the last thing is, everybody says, who does the dishes? We do the dishes. I love doing dishes. I'll go straight to the sink and start doing dishes. My wife offers to come over and help. My son-in-law, Kevin, he offers to help. But this is just really low tech. There is no production company or anything, and yes, we're shooting it on an iPhone. Enough said. Okay, now we're going to go on to today's thing, which is a lot of you are going to say, oh, that's not a Mexican dish. This is a Mexican dish. It's a new classic from the state of Michoacan. They have a lot of trout farms in Michoacan, and so obviously you can go to lots of places that serve trout. They raise massive amounts of macadamia nuts. Now, some of you will say, no, macadamias, they all come from Hawaii. Well, that was actually brought into Hawaii at one point. Or maybe you think it comes from the South Pacific, someplace like Australia or New Zealand or whatever, but they grow them on lots of different places, and they grow massive amounts of them in Michoacan. So trout with macadamia nuts, but balanced and flavored the way that Mexicans would do it is what I'm going to show you today. And the reason that I wanted to do this is because trout's everywhere. You can buy farm-raised trout pretty much anywhere in the country. If they've got a fish market, they probably have trout. Okay, I wanted to show you how I store fish at my house. If I have to buy it the day before, because I bought this the day before, yesterday, I will put the fish into a bag, press out all of the air. I use a freezer bag because it's heavier. Press out all the air, and then I will put it into a bowl and pack ice on top of it that keeps it protected with the heavy bag, and also extremely cold. So it'll be in as good a shape as possible, but still I really wouldn't keep it for more than a day at my house in the refrigerator. So I got this yesterday. I put it together like I showed you there. I'm just going to open this guy up and we'll pull out those trout fillets. Now I think this is best done with what we call pan-dressed trout fillets, which means head and tail off, but that's not what they had at the market when I went to get it. So I'm going to pull these guys out. I've got my flexible cutting board here, which I will lay the trout onto there. That way I can clean that up. I'm going to lay these guys out. I have to cut the head off. I'll show you how to do that here. So this is the head up here. I'm going to take that part off. I'm actually going to cut off this tiny little bit that's over here on the side as well. I'm catching one of those little fins there. So I want to get it that way so that it looks nice. I'm going to get rid of that over to the compost bowl. Yes, we actually do put meat in our compost here at our restaurant. Cut the tail off like that, and then you just want to look at it and make sure that all of the fins are off. This last little bit is so incredibly thin that I want to get rid of that too. I can do it on both sides here. Okay. It's got a kind of a tough skin. So the other one the same way. And then because I want these to be really, really beautifully browned, I will lay them on paper towels first to get them completely dry, because moisture will always inhibit browning, always. So cut the tail off. I'm going to cut these little sides off here where there's almost no meat at all. And that will square up I'm going through this one piece here that has some of that fin still left on it. Okay, now that got that off. Cut across the top here where the head is, and then cut the other side off to square it up. Okay, got that. Now, the next step, I'm going to clean this over here. I'm going to get rid of this cutting board there. Oh, by the way, I did want to make sure everybody understands that under a cutting board, I always put dampened paper towels. Some of those non-skid shelf liners work really good. I have some of those too, and I'll throw those underneath, but a dampened paper towel works good, and then you won't be moving all over the place. I have one under this blue cutting board, which I'm going to get rid of over there, and then I have one underneath this one too to keep it from moving around. So get rid of the gloves now. I'm going to just move the fish over here, and then I'm going to take I got a hot pan here, and I'm going to film it with some olive oil while I'm drying this guy off here. I want that oil to be hot now when I lay this in here. So I will flip these guys over like that so I can make sure that they get really, really beautifully dry. And then sprinkle with salt. And then I'm going to lay these down the opposite of what I did the last time I did fish with you, which was crispy skin. This one is going to be browned flesh instead. Now, these are thin, so they're going to cook really fast. I didn't actually dry that guy off before I salted it, so I'm going to make sure it's very dry there. Flip it over. I think some of the salt came off of it, just a little bit more of the salt there. and then lay it in here. Now, this dish is all about browning, which is to me the most critical thing that you can learn in the kitchen. Browning is what makes deliciousness. It's called the Maillard reaction. When you brown anything, and it makes it taste sweeter and way more complex. While that is cooking over there, I'm going to do some microwave steaming of some green beans here. Just pour a little bit of water into them. Put the microwave, I'm covering them with my handy dandy top there. Put the microwave on, I'm going to do it for 230. And that will sort of blanch them. Let's go back and look at what we've got going over here. Do we have any browning going on yet? Not quite, but almost. It's starting around the edges to be brown. Now, if you want to cook really delicious food, you can't be afraid of fire, okay? I say that the two things that a professional chef brings, well, let's say three things that a professional chef brings to the kitchen is how to use fire, how to use salt, and how to balance flavors. And that's what I'm trying to talk about here in these kitchen hangouts, because I would love to be able to instill those kinds of traits in your cooking so that you can just make the absolute most delicious food that you possibly can. Okay, so now I'm going to, remember, I know not everybody has seen all of these, but what I have here, professional chefs, line cooks always have their utensils in disinfectant water. And that way you don't have to keep running over to the sink and washing everything every time. You can just throw it back in there and you know that it's all clean stuff. So now I've just cleaned my knife here. Let's take a look now. These cook really fast. This is going to be done in just a second. Beautiful. I tore off a little piece of that one there. I want to move this guy around a little bit here, just so that we can make sure it browns evenly. Once the flesh comes away from the skin, you can see that it's starting to pull there. I can start to pull the skin off. That means it's cooked all the way through. I am really not going to cook this hardly at all. On the other side, I'm just going to flip this guy over. That's the brown that we wanted to see. Okay. Flip this guy over like that. And I'm just going to cook it for a second on that side. It's really done now. And then I'm going to lay these guys onto this plate here while we prepare the flavorings that are going to go in this dish. 30 seconds or so is enough on that skin side. Okay, so lay that right up there. Boy, that looks delicious. Okay, and I'm hearing the microwave behind me there saying that the green beans are done. And so I just need to move this out of the way. Take a little bit of garlic here. I'm still working a lot on the peeled garlic that I bought for the mojo de ajo last week. So I just pull that out and I can slice that crosswise. Now for this dish, I want the garlic to be pretty small. So I'm going to do the rocking and chopping back and forth. This is a very light hand, by the way. If you'll notice that almost every professional chef will use a very light hand with their knife. You want to keep your knife sharp so that it actually does the cutting, that you're not trying to force your knife through anything. That's when accidents happen. Everybody thinks that the accidents happen with real sharp knives. No, it's completely the opposite of that. If you have a dull knife and you're forcing it through something, you're likely going to slip, and that's going to hurt you. Okay, so I got my garlic ready there. I'm going to look at these. I need another piece of, where's my towel? Okay, I need a towel. Remember always that this stuff is going to be hot, that you take out of the microwave when you're steaming stuff like I've just done here. I will tip off all the water that was used there for the steaming. Move these guys onto the cutting board now. And I'm just going to give them what I would call sort of like a rough chop. I'm going to line them up. They're completely tender now, just like steamed green beans would be. And I'm going to cut them in about 1-inch pieces, something like that. We'll scoop these guys up and put them into the hot pan over here with the olive oil, because I want to get a little brown on them too. You'll notice that they're a little bit wet, and I just told you that wet is definitely the foe of anything to brown, but this water will really, really quickly start to evaporate, and these guys, you see how fast they're browning? Because I have it in, I have a hot pan here. Okay, so that's what I wanted to get, was a little of that brown on there. So now, we have to be very careful with this. I'm going to add the garlic to the pan as well. Use the flipping motion just for a few seconds to start cooking that garlic, because I want to get the raw flavor out of the garlic. Like that. Oh, it's smelling so good between that brown trout and that. I've got a little bit, this is dark chicken stock. You could use light chicken stock if you happen to have some fish stock on hand, or shellfish stock. Sometimes it's like sold in little packets, concentrated too. You could do that. I took this off the fire because I didn't want the juice to reduce too fast, because now I'm going to add the other ingredients back into this mixture that are going to be the real Mexican flavors in it. So I'm using a jalapeno. In this case, I told you mostly I use Serranos because I can concentrate on the heat being always the same. So we don't know whether this is going to be very hot or not, but I'm going to cut the stem off of it, open it up. You can see the seed pod there. So I'm going to cut that seed pod out. I'm going to pull out the rest of these veins with my fingers. Remember to always do this with some latex gloves if you are sensitive. Take that out like that, seed pod there, and then use my knife to cut the veins. Move that over. And then I'm going to cut this into small, almost like really tiny dice by cutting it crosswise, collecting all of that. And then again, using this sort of fluid motion with my knife, my left finger's curled under so that they're holding everything firmly in place. And I'm going to toss this mixture, this dice of jalapeno into the skillet. And then same thing with the other half of this. Of course, you'll add the amount of jalapeno that you like, or serrano. I actually brought out some shishito peppers as well because I love the flavor of them. It's not a varietal that you will really find in Mexico except in specialty markets, but I like it a lot, and we oftentimes have some in our restaurants. So this is what a shishito would look like. Some of them are hot and some of them are mild. It's a Japanese cultivar, high in acid, which is one of the things that I really like about it. So you would just chop that up the same way that I'm chopping up the jalapeno. So we'll see how hot this one actually comes out. So I didn't taste it or anything before we started this. Okay, now the next thing that I'm going to add to that skillet is the macadamias. Now in my market, macadamias come salted and roasted already. You can put them in whole if you like, but I like to give them just a little bit of a chop across so that there's irregular pieces, just like that. They're very soft nut, by the way. They're not hard hardly at all, and they've got a really lovely fattiness to it when you eat them. I think they're super delicious. So these are already roasted. If yours come unroasted, then you would want to put them into the oven. I like to do it 325 degrees for about 10 minutes or so. They'll take on a little tiny bit of brown, golden, shall we say. So we'll put the macadamias in there with our garlic and green beans. That's gorgeous looking now. Okay, last thing, we have to season it with a little bit of lime juice. So I'll take our Mexican lime juicer here and squeeze that into the pan. A little bit more for this. I think that should do it. But of course, we now have to taste all of this, so I'll make sure that we stir it up. Oh, I have to give it a little bit of salt. There's no salt in this at all. My broth was a little salted, but not too much, so just a little. I think for me, it'll take a little hair of salt there. Wow, that's smelling good, looking good. So, okay. I'm gonna turn that off now. Got a little bit of that. Oh wow, that's nice. The acid from the lime juice is super good in that. And last thing, I'm gonna put fresh herb in there. My choice for this dish is cilantro because it goes so beautifully with the jalapeno and the lime juice that's in there. So I'll take a chunk of this. I turned the pan off because I didn't want to reduce any more of the liquid out of that. And I'll do my classic chiffonade of cilantro and bunching up the cilantro like that. And of course, this is all up to you. If you want to put another herb in there, I will tell you cilantro is really, really good in it. But if you have basil on hand, or if you have flat leaf parsley on hand, pretty much any herb would work. I chopped all the way down to the very, the last part was just stem, no leaf left. Put that in there. I'm just gonna add a touch more liquid in this. Maybe we'll take some of this liquid from the cooking of the green beans. Just needs to have enough pooling of liquid now. Yeah, just a little bit of that gorgeous flavored broth there. Take out our, okay. Yeah, now that's looking just right. And so this will become top here over. Boy, doesn't that look like you could eat that? That's gorgeous. Those seared green beans will be so nice in that. And there went my spatula. Okay, and there you have it. One of the traditional things that you will find a lot in the state of Michoacan, where they grow so much farm-raised trout. Here, done with the macadamias that are a local product, some garlic, some jalapenos, some lime, some cilantro, and of course green beans add a really nice balancing flavor in all of that. But feel free, if you don't have green beans, use some broccoli in there. You could take some wilted kale and put that in there if that made more sense to you, or if that's what you have on hand. So take this dish, this idea of this beautifully browned trout with macadamias, flavored in a very Mexican way with jalapenos and lime juice and garlic, and make it your own. Thanks so much for hanging out in the kitchen with me today. I'll see you all tomorrow.